Hello everyone, Erin LaFaive here, herbalist and plant priestess with Full Circle Herbals. I would like to show you some of my dried mullein that I had from my garden last growing season and talk a little bit about the verb priestessing. Not sure if it's even a word, but today it is. Today it is a word. So let's see what we have here. So this week with the Plant Priestess Exploration, we're talking about mullein and about learning herbs as part of being a plant priestess. So here is mullein, and this is a fairly, I don't know, small plant that I found in my garden, popped up all by itself. And so I knew that next year I would be adding more soil to my garden, so I thought I would just harvest it then, because else next year I would probably till the garden before this would even pop up. So I kind of looked forward to if this plant would even get to survive through another growing season, and the answer was no. So here it is. I picked the root and all, and it's still very soft. I'm going to get the microphone closer to me, so let's see if you can hear this. It's very soft. It's still very soft. When it's fresh, it's very soft. And if you pick a leaf, and you know, some people do get a little dermatitis if they if kind of like a little allergic reaction to the hairs. But in general, they don't like really poke or anything like that. And I've never met anybody yet who has an allergic reaction to just touching the plant. But something to consider. But I like to like put it on my cheek or show kids this plant. And it's a fun one to say, hey, this is toilet paper plant, because if you ever need toilet paper when you're out camping or something, find one of these plants and wipe your bum with it if you need to. So they get a kick out of that, and they usually remember it. So these leaves can get really, really long. They can be a foot or more long. And this is the basal rosette part of it. So this is the first year's growth. The first year's growth is usually just a big, like I said, basal rosette. And it just grows from the center point and comes on out. And this leaf is what I would use for medicine. You certainly can use the flowers, and I think there's some uses for the roots, although I'm not as familiar with that and haven't looked into it much. And other people do fun things with the stalks, because they get these huge flower stalks on them. Sometimes they can be 5 feet tall, and people will put wax on them or soak them in oil and then light them on fire, and they're kind of like a candle. So some of the common names for mullein include that kind of use for it. So using them as like a little mini torch. So yeah, the leaves are used in teas as to help with like a cough, congestion in this respiratory area. Some people find that the little hairs can be irritating if they're not steeped out of the infusion, the tea, enough. So consider using a, what I usually use to really strain out every little bits of stuff is like a coffee filter. So I just strain it right through the coffee filter, and it goes through pretty fast and takes out all the little tiny things. So this is mullein. It kind of, I'd say the color of these dried leaves are fairly close to what you would see. More green, of course, but they still have that kind of light green, silverish kind of look to them. And they can be much bigger than this. So this is mullein. There are some smoke blends. People sometimes smoke this in little blends to help with smoke cessation, stop smoking. So I've never tried it that way. So there we are, little mullein here. So if I were to use this, of course, I would grind it up or chop it up into little bits and pieces so that the water can infuse into the leaf better, have more surface area to come in contact with. So there is mullein. And so I picked it whole, and you can tell I dried it. It dried really well. Just hung it upside down somewhere, and I keep it in this paper bag, and it says mullein, late summer, yard. So I know kind of what time of the season I picked it. I like to know that because I think there's some differences in a spring harvest versus a fall harvest. There's different things going on in the plant. And then I also should have added the year, just so I can kind of keep track. The year is just one of my data points that I use. So looking at the color, the scent, and the taste would help me know if this was still a useful, good dried herb. If they start losing their flavor or color, you can, that tells me that it's losing its qualities to the medicinal qualities. And then also if this is like 5 years old or more, that would be, you know, another data point for me to say, okay, the color's going, this is, if it was, you know, 5 years old, then it's, that's another thing that's kind of showing me that's in decline. But I have had some herbs, dried herbs, that last several years, and they hold their smell, they hold their flavor. And if they have a good smell, flavor, and color, that's a really good indication that they've preserved, everything in there is preserved. They also preserve longer if they're in their full form, like this mullein is. Once you start grinding them up and chopping them up into bits and pieces, then their more surface area is exposed to the oxygen, and oxygen breaks down things, oxidization. So try to keep it in its whole form. However, you can see, like, that's a big thing that I have to put. It's easier if I put everything in jars because it just stacks better. It takes up less space, but there are some things I keep in bags. And then I put those bags in a big Tupperware container. One of those, what do you call it, Tupperware containers? Big bins, you know, big storage bins, and put the lid on it to help keep the air from getting to it as well. Because if you keep things in paper bags, there's a lot of oxygen that can, there's still a lot of, it breathes. This bag breathes a lot. It can absorb flavors of other herbs. It can absorb flavors of your house if you've got other strong scents around. So that's why having things in jars, you really keep them away from the elements, keep them, the oxygen stays away from them, and other smells from your house don't get in there. And moisture too. Moisture can seep through that paper bag really easily. So if you have humid air in your house, that could certainly rehydrate those herbs. And then if those herbs don't dry out properly, then they can mold. So that's something else you want to look for, is like mold and things like that, or other insects that find it in your house and chomp on it. So that's why I put it into a big plastic bin as well, to just keep another layer of the environment from degrading it, and you know, degrading it, making it not be as medicinal and tasty as possible. So those are some thoughts on harvesting, drying, storing mullein.